It started with a chair scrape. That sharp, dragging sound sliced through the air just after the CO barked. "You call that a report?" Alex, barely 24 and new to the company, flinched. He didn't respond. He just sat there, hands gripping the edge of the table, trying to keep still. The head of the conference room, stood Manu Soni, the kind of man who turned silence into something weaponized. His suit was perfect, voice louder than it needed to be, and eyes fixed on Alex like he wasn't worth a second chance. John Tan sat halfway down the table. He didn't speak. No one ever did. But his jaw tensed, his fists clenched under the table, knuckles pushing up white through his skin. The meeting room was glass-walled and spotless, but nothing about it felt clean. The light from the projector flickered against the polished surface, reflecting Alex's red face and Manu's glare. "I want this rewritten, formatted correctly, and done by lunch. Or don't bother coming back." Manu snapped his fingers once, then turned away like he hadn't just humiliated someone in front of a dozen peers. No one moved. Not a cough. Not a sound. John's eyes drifted down to the watch on his wrist. It was slightly loose, silver-faced, and old-fashioned. It had belonged to his wife. May had worn it every day before the chemo made her hands too thin. He had promised her he'd be strong. Right now, his strength felt like silence. But silence wasn't enough anymore. The CEO kept talking. Something about quarterly targets, something about failure being unacceptable. But John wasn't listening anymore. He looked to his right. One of his co-workers sat frozen, fingers tapping an invisible rhythm on her lanyard. Others stared at their notes, unwilling to look up. Nobody said a thing, because everyone here knew. Speak up, and you'd be next. That evening, John helped his son Liam finish his math homework while his daughter Ava doodled butterflies on the back of an envelope. She didn't know what the envelope held, only that it was colorful enough to earn a magnet spot on the fridge. Did he clean the kitchen? He packed the school lunches. He stood under the shower too long. And when the house finally quieted, John opened his laptop. Point one email. No name. No return address. No formatting. Just detail after detail. Dates, quotes, patterns. Things that only someone inside the system could know. That he read it 5 times. Deleted it. Rewrote it. Paused. Then whispered out loud, "If not me, who?" And clicked send. Have you ever sat through something that made your stomach twist? Because speaking up could cost everything you worked for? Leave a comment below if you've ever felt trapped in silence. And if this story hits close to home, make sure you like, subscribe, drop your thoughts below, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story like this. The scent always hit him first. Even years after she passed, May's jasmine perfume still lingered in the corners of their apartment. It clung to the scarf she wore during chemo. It stayed on the pillowcases she insisted on air drying. It was faint, but John swore it greeted him at the door every evening, as if she never fully left. He placed his keys in the bowl near the fridge and stepped out of his shoes. The kitchen light hummed. On the living room floor, Liam was working through math problems, eyebrows scrunched in focus. Ava sat cross-legged nearby, drawing with a box of crayons spilling across the tiles. Her masterpiece was a garden full of purple trees and flying turtles. John watched for a moment before crouching beside Liam. "Need help with number 6? He asked. Liam nodded without looking up. "Fractions again." He ruffled the boy's hair. "We'll beat them together." Dinner was quiet, filled with the usual clinks and soft conversation about school. Later, while folding laundry, John found one of May's old t-shirts tucked in the back of a drawer. It still held her shape. His chest tightened. That night, he stood at the balcony, looking out over the city. Below, traffic buzzed. Above, the moon hung still. That a promise echoed in his head. May's final words in the hospital. "Don't let them change you. Don't stay quiet just to survive." He nodded to no one, letting her words sit. Tomorrow, he knew, had to be different. The HR office had the warmth of a clinic. Cold chairs, gray walls, a single clock that ticked just loud enough to be distracting. John sat with a folder in his lap. Dates, incidents, printed screenshots. Across from him, the HR officer barely glanced up as he flipped through the pages. Some employees respond differently to high-pressure leadership styles, the man said, without emotion. Unless there's a formal violation, we encourage peer mediation. John blinked. He humiliated someone in front of the entire team. "We'll document your concern," the HR rep replied. already filing the form away. Is there anything else? There was, but saying it wouldn't matter. John stood up and left without shaking hands. Later that day, in the cafeteria, he found Sarah near the vending machines. She handed him a coffee and leaned against the wall. You tried HR, didn't you? She asked. Quietly, he nodded. They gave me the same line last year, she whispered, after he embarrassed me during a client pitch. Her voice broke slightly. Said I presented like a schoolgirl, in front of 6 partners. I couldn't sleep for days. John stared at the floor. They think if they ignore it, we'll just move on. Or burn out, she said, flatly. The coffee tasted bitter. No sugar could fix that. The days blurred into each other. Project deadlines grew tighter, meetings longer, tempers shorter. And still, Manu roamed the floor like he owned every minute of everyone's time. Staff whispered behind closed doors. People left abruptly. New hires didn't last. One week someone was sitting across from you. The next week, their desk was cleared out before lunch. John kept his head down, but the weight of watching others crumble was wearing thin. He couldn't unsee Alex's trembling hands. Couldn't forget Sarah's story. Couldn't keep pretending it was all fine. At night, after the kids were asleep, he opened a blank document and stared. He started typing point one sentence at a time, a clear summary of incidents. Specific dates, times, mannerisms, moments that couldn't be brushed off. He rewrote it twice. His finger hovered over the send button. He thought of Liam's braces, of Ava's birthday next month. He thought of rent, insurance, school forms, all the invisible bricks it took to hold his life together. He closed the laptop. And then, life, real life, interrupted. The phone rang mid-morning the next day, just as he was preparing to re-edit. The email, unknown number. This is Ms. Tan's school. Ava has a fever. We need someone to collect her. John packed his bag in less than a minute, barely remembering to log out of his computer. His heart beat faster, but not from fear this time, from urgency. The kind only a parent understands. He found Ava curled up on the nurse's cot, cheeks flushed and voice raspy. Daddy, she mumbled, reaching for him. I'm here, he said, scooping her up gently. For a few hours, he forgot about corporate nightmares and toxic managers. He made her soup, read her books, cleaned up after a spilled juice box, and held her as she napped. By evening, her fever dropped. She was smiling again, watching cartoons, giggling through a tissue-stuffed nose. He sat by the window, laptop back open. The email still sat in drafts. This time, he didn't hesitate. He changed nothing. He hit send. Ever been caught between doing what's right and doing what keeps the lights on? Drop a comment below if you've ever had to weigh your values against your livelihood. And if this moment speaks to you, make sure to like, subscribe, leave your thoughts, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story that matters. 9:45 a.m. Monday, the message landed in the board's inbox with no fanfare. No subject line, no sender name, just the words, internal culture at Sports Hub, documented abuse by executive leadership. Within minutes, Bryn Jones, chairman of the board, called an emergency session. At his age, Bryn didn't move quickly, but he took disruption seriously. His assistant later said she'd never seen him close a door that hard. 11 a.m. Same morning, the announcement came in through a company-wide email. An internal review has been initiated. Expect full cooperation from all departments. The entire floor shifted. Not physically, but emotionally. You could feel it. People whispering behind closed doors. Printing less. Locking screens with unusual urgency. HR printed attendance logs from the last 6 months. IT traced anonymous IPs. From the internal server, John watched from his desk. He said nothing. Did nothing. His heart had started pounding hours ago and hadn't stopped. His hands wouldn't stay still. He clicked the same tab 4 times in a row without noticing. Sarah passed by his desk, but didn't stop. Just a glance. One that said, "Brace yourself." Whispers followed Manu wherever he walked. For the first time in years, he didn't look invincible, but something far worse was on the way. 3 p.m., CEO's office. Manu slammed the door behind him. Not figuratively. The actual door. Loud enough to make someone in the next room flinch. He called an emergency meeting, inviting only 8 staff members, handpicked. John's name was on the list. The air in the room was thick. Manu didn't waste time. Someone here sent a report, he said, pacing slowly. A very detailed one, but not detailed enough to avoid being exposed. He stopped mid-step and pointed to Alex. Was it you? Alex shook his head. No, sir. Too quick, Manu snapped. You seem nervous. Are you hiding something? Alex turned pale. Everyone could see it. Manu moved on. Or was it you? He stared at a woman 2 seats down. You've been pushing back in meetings lately. She looked stunned. John watched the scene unfold with mounting disgust. He knew this wasn't a real investigation. It was a threat, a trap, and someone was going to pay for something they didn't do. After 10 minutes of accusation-laced silence, Manu dismissed the group. Except for 1:10 p.m. junior staff office. By the time the team returned to their desks, word was spreading. Someone had been fired. A junior project analyst. No explanation. Just walked out with her plant in a half-empty mug. John stood by the copier when he heard it. That poor girl, someone whispered. She just renewed her lease. He couldn't breathe. This wasn't justice. This was retaliation, the break. Room had never been so quiet. A few people gathered around the coffee machine, staring down into their cups. The fridge buzzed louder than the conversations. John leaned against the counter, hands in his pockets. He hadn't eaten all day. Sarah joined him, glancing around before speaking. You did the right thing, she said, softly. But be careful. He met her eyes. He's guessing now. Someone else just lost their job. She lowered her voice even more. He's not going to stop. Not until he has someone to blame. John nodded. The weight of her warning wasn't new. It just felt heavier now. The rest of the day passed slowly. Every footstep in the hallway sounded like it might be headed for him. Every time his phone buzzed, he half expected to see a calendar invite labeled termination meeting. But none came. That night, he tucked Ava in, her small arms wrapped around her stuffed rabbit. Liam was in his room, earbuds in, lost in his own world. John sat on the edge of his bed, looking at the email confirmation still saved on his phone. No1 knew. And still, people were suffering. Have you ever seen power protect itself while the innocent take the fall? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your voice matters. And if stories like this make you think twice, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the moments that shake the system. The boardroom was silent, and not the kind that suggested calm. The mahogany table stretched almost the length of the room, its polished surface catching reflections from the overhead lights. A subtle scent of wood polish hung in the air, blending with the faint aroma of black coffee in untouched mugs. Bryn Jones sat at the head, spine straight despite his age, cane resting beside his chair. His glasses were off, folded neatly next to the printed copy of the complaint. He didn't need to read it again. He knew every word. Across from him, Manu Soni tapped his pen once, twice, 3 times. Then finally broke the silence. I've given this company everything. You know that. Bryn didn't flinch. You gave it your methods. And now, you've given it doubt. Manu leaned back. This is one complaint. Probably written by someone who couldn't handle discipline. No, Bryn said, voice even. This is 15 resignations in 2 years. This is a hallway full of silence and side glances. This is HR drowning in exit interviews and fear. Manu's jaw twitched. The staff, Bryn continued, slowly, don't trust you anymore. Those words landed harder than any accusation. Because they were undeniable. The internal message came in just before lunch. Envelope with arrow subject. Leadership transition announcement. Dear all, after ongoing conversations with the board, Manu Soni has stepped down from his role as CEO of Sports Hub. Effective immediately. We thank him for his years of service. Interim leadership will be assumed by Owen Jean Teak. Further updates to follow. The entire floor went still. N01 shouted. No one clapped, but glances flew across cubicles like wildfire. For the first time in months, people didn't whisper, they spoke out loud. Did you see it? It's real. He's out. Wait, is this a joke? No one was laughing, but the relief was real. John read the email at his desk. No name attached to his inbox. No suspicion. Just those lines, clear as glass. Manu was gone. Across the office, footsteps echoed. He looked up. There he was, Manu, walking with a single folder under his arm. His tie was missing. His steps weren't rushed, but they weren't slow either. He didn't look left or right. He just kept walking, past rows of people who no longer pretended not to see him. He reached the elevator. The doors opened. He stepped in, and just like that, he was gone. The change wasn't immediate, but it was visible. The next day, John noticed that meetings started on time and ended on time. No yelling, no tension leaking through closed doors. The usual heaviness in the air had lifted. Glass panels no longer felt like traps. People smiled again, real smiles. A week later, the break room actually had people in it. Conversations flowed. Laughter returned. Someone brought muffins. Sarah even pinned a comic to the community corkboard. John passed by her desk. She stood and grinned. "We did it." He gave her a small nod, voice low. "You did a lot too." She tilted her head. "Still anonymous?" "Has to be," he said, keeping his tone light. "But watching this place breathe again, that's enough." Back at his desk, John pulled up the resignation notice again. He didn't need to reread it. He just let the words sit on screen, glowing faintly in the afternoon light. That it wasn't pride he felt. Not really. It was something quieter, something steadier. John said in quote, "I didn't set out to be a hero. I just wanted the bullying to stop. I just wanted people to feel safe showing up to work again." The first thing people noticed wasn't an announcement or a grand speech. It was the tone. Eun Teak didn't walk the floor like a ruler. He walked like someone listening. On his first day as acting CEO, he stopped by each department, not with a script, but with questions. He didn't bring a PowerPoint. He brought a notepad. By Friday, half the staff had been asked for input, and the other half? They'd already heard about it. Team leads started calling on junior staff in meetings. Again, people volunteered ideas without glancing at each other nervously. Managers started thanking people, out loud, in front of others. The tension that once sat in every hallway had eased. In one meeting, a project manager shared a solution to a budgeting issue, and instead of being corrected mid-sentence, she was applauded. It wasn't dramatic, just a moment of recognition. But it mattered. In the break room, laughter became normal again. Not forced, not the nervous kind that died the second someone stepped in. This time it lasted. Someone played music from their phone over lunch. A playlist titled "Finally Breathing." John didn't say much, but he noticed it all. Every small shift, every lifted shoulder, every glance that didn't carry fear. It had started with an email. One voice in the dark. Home. Things looked the same, but they felt different. The stove hissed as John stirred a pan of garlic and vegetables. The scent filled the room. Liam sat at the table, swinging his feet and describing a school debate. Ava jumped in between bites of rice, telling a story about her drawing being chosen for the hallway display. Their voices overlapped, clumsy and energetic. John smiled. He plated the food, placed the wok aside, and finally sat down. "So," Liam said with a grin, "you're not stressed anymore." John raised an eyebrow. "Was I that obvious?" Ava nodded with a mouthful of broccoli. "You used to stare at your phone a lot." John laughed under his breath. "Maybe I did." After dinner, while the kids packed up their backpacks for the next day, he stepped into the hallway and reached into his drawer. Inside, next to his folded work shirts, lay May's watch. He picked it up. It ticked softly. "Still working." "Still." Steadied. He looked at it the way he used to look at her, like it could somehow answer all the questions he couldn't say out loud. "I did it for you too," he whispered, and no one heard him but the watch. "And that was enough," John said. "The hardest step wasn't hitting send. It was believing I deserved to be heard." He placed the watch back in the drawer, then closed it gently. In the living room, Ava was already asleep on the couch. Liam had a textbook open, but wasn't reading. He was staring at nothing, thinking, the way John sometimes did when he wasn't sure what came next. John watched his son. Maybe one day Liam would face a moment like that. A moment when the world tells you to sit down, and your conscience tells you to stand. When that day comes, John hoped Liam would remember this, not the fear, but the follow through. John said, "Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, 'Try again tomorrow.'" Has silence ever cost you peace? Have you ever wanted to speak up, but held back because of what you might lose? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice might be the spark someone else needs. If this story struck a chord, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment that reminds us what standing up really means.